Hello and welcome back to Quarterlight. Today we're going to look at the Rover P6. The P6 was first introduced in 1963 and ran all the way to 1977. It was also known as the Rover 2000, Rover 2200 and Rover 3500, depending on which engine displacement the vehicle had. It sold around about 322,000 units, and like the name suggests, P6, it replaced the P5. Now the P6 was aimed at kind of like a younger buyer. The P5 was a very conservative and possibly a bit more upmarket to the P6, but there was a lot of younger buyers out there, and this was trying to really appeal to those people. It won European Car of the Year. I think it was actually the first European Car of the Year that it actually won, and it won many awards, including safety awards. It had things on there like disc brakes all the way around, which was quite advanced for the time. The brochure we're going to look at is a little bit different, because the brochure we're looking at is actually for the Mark II. We sometimes say Series 2, but Rover preferred us to call it the Mark II. I guess similar to Jags. Was it trying to think of a Jaguar? It was certainly a lot cheaper than a Jaguar, but yeah, we're supposed to call it the Mark II, and that came out in 1970. But more specifically, we're actually going to look at the Rover 2200 SC and 2200 TC. SC simply meaning single carburetor and TC meaning a twin carburetor. And that came out in 1973 and ran all the way to the end of production. I think it was March 1977 when the very final one came out. This is the brochure we're going to look at today. It's dated 1975, although you can see all the cars in here are showing M registration cars, which indicates that these were probably the first cars, the 1973 cars, I would estimate. But if you ever try and put any of these registrations in a registration finder, it doesn't bring anything up at all, so we can't work out the exact year of these particular cars. Okay, so here we are now inside the first page of the Rover 2200 brochure. This picture is obviously showing the 22 TC or twin carburetor engine. Again, it's showing an M registration plate, and I think this colour is, for me at least, is kind of the colour I always think of for these Rover P6s. This colour is called turmeric. Now, basically what happened to bring this in existence, it was a replacement for the Rover 2000 SC and TC. And basically this text is kind of like saying on here, it's the same car with a bigger engine, and that's essentially what it was. And over on the next page it's showing a cutaway view of that new engine. Like I say, it's really showing that this is a bigger engine for the Rover P6, the 2200, to replace that Rover 2000. Basically, it's just an increased bore diameter on the engine. What they also did, they now put a 15-gallon fuel tank in the car as well, to obviously just to make it go further. But there was also a gearbox choices of an automatic or a manual, and like I say, disc brakes all round, which I often think is, quite, even in what this brochure is 75, I still think this is quite advanced to have disc brakes all round even then. And here we go, a really nice look at the inside of the Rover P6. Now these pictures would be showing the TC version, which had the full instrument display. The SC didn't have quite as much. It was more warning lights rather than these actual gauges. And of course, the main picture is showing a left-hand drive 2200, which would have been an export model, but even so, it gives you a good look at the view of that, and you can see how it's marked on the steering wheel as 2200 on the steering wheel. Lovely switchgear. I particularly like these hazard warning lights, which they pop out and red behind. It also had a steering wheel which was adjustable for rake, which was great for the time. The switchgear itself, things like wipers, lights, they're kind of like a dial switchgear. Certainly not going the same way as Citroens, where Citroens were really at fingertip control. These were a little bit less convenient. You had to reach down for them. They look great and look timely, but I don't think the interiors were anywhere near as advanced as what Citroen was doing at the time. Now, a lovely full double page, centre page picture of this green Rover 2200, this time the SC model. And this colour would have been called avocado. It kind of looks really dark on this picture. I don't think it was quite as dark as colour as what it's showing on here, but it's certainly a less common colour than the turmeric we saw earlier. This also gives us a good look at these side lights, and you can see the little like tiny little bit at the top there. And this is one of the safety features they did. Certainly at night when you're driving, it really gives you a pinpoint accuracy of where the corners of the car were. So it was a nice little feature, that. Now we move on to the interior, and it's showing a very beautiful interior. One of the things about these P6s, at least what I think, is a very sort of classy interior. Here it's showing the standard seats, which was like a nylon type of seats, and they certainly are really comfortable looking seats. There was an option for leather, of course. You could have your P6 with leather, and I guess that suited the car, but I personally am not a huge fan of leather interiors. As it says in the description, it is a cold interior in winter, and it gets too warm in summer unless you've got it heated and cooled. So I probably would have gone for that standard interior personally. Although certainly when you're buying older cars, usually the leather interior looks better and stands up to the test of time far better. If you notice on the final picture on the right hand side, it's showing a quarter light. Yay! We now move on to a page really talking about safety and control quality. A lot of these British car brochures really tried to focus particularly on the quality side of things, because they had such a poor reputation, particularly in the 70s, of having very bad quality control. So they really tried to promote this. Similar sort of thing we've seen on the Princess, really showing that it's a quality product. And I don't really particularly think of a P6 and think of it as being poor quality by any stretch of the imagination. Although in 1974, the Rover 3500, the top model, the V8, it was awarded worst car in England by one magazine. The runner-up was the Austin Allegro. In third place, the Triumph Stag. I really think the British press was really out to get the British cars, and we kind of like, self-deprecating, and we really put ourselves down. But I don't ever really think of the Rover P6 to be a particularly poor quality car by any stretch of the imagination. But there we go. Maybe my mind plays tricks on me, but let me know in the comments if you think it had a poor reputation for quality control or not. Okay, and on this final page, as it so often is, the interior dimensions, the performance technical specifications are all on this. It also mentions the colours and trims. I have a little bit of a colour chart as well, so it does list the colours, and it tells you the trim colours on the bottom left hand corner there. Like I say, I do have a little bit of a colour chart, so we will briefly look at that in a moment. But as I said, this is all the performances, etc. So on here it's showing that it's got a touring fuel consumption of around about 29.3 miles per gallon for the SC and 26.2 miles per gallon for the TC. Certainly that twin carburetor certainly affects the fuel economy, but it's more than made up with the maximum speed. The SC does 100 miles an hour, the 2200 is doing 108 miles per hour. So I guess the choice is yours. Do you want that few extra miles per hour or that fewer miles per gallon? I guess with fuel prices at the moment, we'd probably go for that SC and get a few more miles per gallon maybe. It's also showing the boot. Now when you see the Rover P6, it looks like it's got a lovely huge trunk. You imagine it to be so spacious. There's a few problems with that. The Mark II put the battery in the boot, and also it had the spur wheel in there. And more than that, it had a very sort of complex rear suspension setup. So it was really quite a cramped boot, actually. It's actually showing you a few things you can do with that spur wheel because there wasn't much space in there. So it's saying, number one, the spur wheel is normally mounted on the left-hand side of the body, which has ample space for day-to-day requirements. So basically, in its normal position, you could put maybe a couple of groceries in there. There really wasn't any space with it like that. In position 2, it can be released from the mounting and placed in the boot well to provide extra width necessary for longer objects. So they were really conscious about this not having much space in the boot. I guess today's cars, they would have just stuck it underneath, but no. What they decided to do on the P6, you could actually option for a touring package and you could put that spur wheel on top of the boot, and it was quite a common package to get because it was a limited boot. Of course then you've got a much heavier boot to raise up, but nevertheless it did free some more space up for you. And here is a chart with those 6 colours mentioned in the brochure. Although I have to say, these Rover colours are just Rover colours. I had this chart. It's not specific to this particular brochure, but it is certainly the 6 mentioned in the brochure. And very unusual colour names that I don't even know how to pronounce that. Pendilican is just white. I don't know why they came up with this because Brasilia is brown, a very 70s colour. That turmeric is what I always associate with the P6s. And we've got the blue, the reds and the avocados. Like I said, they're not a perfect match to the colours of them, I've noticed, but it gives you an idea of the colours that it's referring to in the brochure nevertheless. Which colour would you choose? Would you go for the classic P6 turmeric, a classic 70s colour like Brasilia, which actually looks quite nice on the P6s, I must admit, or something a little bit more unusual like that avocado? Let me know in the comments what you think anyway. Again, this is the back page now, particularly nice for considering it's just the back page. It's just the basic SC version this time, and it gives you a good idea what it looks like in red. You'll also notice on this brochure it's showing what I believe is December 1975 for the particular date of the brochure, and as it says there, Leyland Cars, British Leyland UK Limited, Solihull, Warwickshire, and postcode on there as well. And there's also, as they always say on these brochures, some of the specifications might differ from year to year, so may not be exactly what it looks like in the brochure. A great look at that boot. Like I say, it looks like it's huge in there, but it really is taken up by that suspension, spur wheel, and indeed battery on this Mark II. 32,370. Yes, that's how many units were produced of the Rover 2200 TC and 2200 SC. The last one coming off the production line on the 19th of March 1977 for the export market, although I do believe that car eventually went back to the UK. What do I think of the P6 in general? Well, I personally really love them. I think it was the right move for Rover to be looking at a more younger audience and less conservative from the P5s and P4s. They continued that trend with the ST1, which was a great futuristic design, although I don't think it was quite as classy as the P6. Eventually, Rover decided to start looking back on its designs and building once again a conservative design, and I think that was a mistake. I think that eventually led to the demise of Rover. Thank you once again for watching Course Light today. Please do like, subscribe and comment. I'll certainly reply to any comment that comes out. There will be more reviews of brochures in the very near future, so we'll see you very soon. Let's grab a cup of tea and say goodbye for now.